I am Clara Jensen, founder and CEO of Innovate Solutions. I built this biomedical technology company with nothing but sheer spite and the titanium rod connecting my prosthetic leg to my remaining femur. 15 years ago, my parents threw me out when I was 12, just months after a crash took my leg. They had one sentence for me: my brother Ryan deserved a future more than a liability like me. Today, Ryan Jensen walked into my high-rise office in Palo Alto, California, carrying an old briefcase and a desperation he couldn't hide. The soundproof door clicked shut. I leaned back into my Italian leather chair, watching the blood drain from his face as he recognized the CEO interviewing him was me. On my desk, Ryan Jensen's resume rested beside a sleek, custom-made carbon fiber prosthetic leg, the kind my company manufactured. It was a silent reminder that I hadn't just built an empire. I had rebuilt myself from the pieces they threw away. I looked at Ryan and managed a professional, emotionless smile. "Welcome to Innovate Solutions, Mr. Jensen," I said, my voice sharp and controlled. "We are here to discuss your qualifications over the past 15 years, especially your employment history since graduating Yale. I want to know if those expensive degrees are enough to cover a glaring lack of real-world resilience." Ryan swallowed hard, his hands trembling as he reached for the chair. He wasn't an applicant. He was a ghost of the past I thought I had buried. I knew he was here for one reason: he had run out of options. And I, the abandoned 12-year-old, held his entire fate in my hands. If you think blood ties mean everything, this story will prove you wrong. I chose absolute justice over conditional forgiveness. Hit like and right now to hear the full, unforgiving account of how I made them pay the ultimate price. The quiet hum of the air conditioning was the only sound in the enormous office. Ryan shifted in his chair, trying to regain his composure after the shock of seeing me. "Mr. Jensen," I repeated, leaning forward, my arms resting on the smooth black surface of the desk. "Your resume indicates a degree from Yale in financial economics and a brief 8-month stint at a boutique consulting firm that went under last quarter. You listed no substantial projects, no measurable achievements, and 2 short internships during your 4 years of study. Please explain why Innovate Solutions should consider you for a senior marketing role that requires at least 4 years of demonstrated success in a volatile market." Ryan's prepared script evaporated under my gaze. He stammered, "The Yale curriculum is extremely rigorous. I focused intensely on my academics. My GPA was 3.8. I assumed the pedigree would." "Pedigree buys a yacht, Mr. Jensen," I cut him off, my voice sharp. "It doesn't run a multi-million-dollar company, and it certainly doesn't sell medical devices to the toughest buyers in the industry. We don't hire based on who your parents paid. We hire based on competence and demonstrable results. Tell me about a time you had to solve a crisis when the solution wasn't found in a textbook." He fumbled through an anecdote about a group project gone wrong, minimizing the issue, smoothing the edges. I listened patiently, but inside, the contempt grew. This was the boy who had been deemed worthy of a future, the one who got the security, the opportunities, and the ease. 15 years ago, the only crisis I was solving was how to breathe with pneumonia and a fever that wouldn't break. Ryan's voice faded. "So I was hoping to apply my theoretical knowledge here, gain the experience necessary to move into management. And what about the financial necessity? Why this sudden urgency to enter the workforce 3 years after graduation?" I pressed. He looked away, his eyes darting to the floor. "Personal reasons. My savings are depleted. I need immediate employment. The golden boy is bankrupt." The realization was a bitter sip of victory. I put down his resume and stood up, walking toward the window that overlooked the Bay Area. The Silicon Valley landscape glittered, a tribute to merit, not birthright. I didn't turn around when I spoke next. "Ryan, do you remember the car accident? I was 12 years old. It was a clear, cold Saturday morning, and our minivan hydroplaned on the I-95 overpass. The air thickened instantly." He mumbled, "Clara." I don't think this is relevant to the job. Everything about me is relevant to the job, Ryan. Everything about us is relevant, I countered. That crash was not just a traffic accident, it was a detonation. It blew a hole through my left leg, and more importantly, it exposed the moral core of our parents. I heard the leather chair creak as he shifted nervously. I allowed a deep, ragged breath to escape, recalling the sterile smell of the hospital and the relentless, suffocating pain. The bills I remembered began arriving the day after the first surgery. They were astronomical, hitting the family's premium health insurance like a sledgehammer. Our father, Marcus Jensen, the renowned orthopedic surgeon, a man dedicated to fixing bones, was suddenly dealing with something he couldn't fix: financial ruin. Marcus's face, usually so composed, had been a mask of terror. I hadn't understood why at the time. I was just a sick, traumatized child. The official story was always that the medical expenses, the complex reconstruction attempts, the inevitable amputation, the years of physical therapy would drain the college fund that had been set aside for your Ivy League aspirations. But the truth was infinitely darker, and I had pieced it together years later after founding Innovate Solutions and learning the ins and outs of medical billing in the United States. My medical costs weren't just expensive, Ryan, I said, turning back to face him. They were a problem that threatened to expose a bigger secret, a secret involving Medicare fraud. Ryan went ashen. What are you talking about? Dad is a surgeon. He always practiced ethically. Did he, Ryan, or did he use inflated billing for procedures and phantom patients to maintain his lifestyle? Did he use the premium insurance we had to cover his own illegal ventures? The medical bills for a complicated 12-year-old amputee suddenly became the ultimate liability, not just because of the price tag, but because they brought a level of scrutiny to his practice that he couldn't withstand. My injury was the final accounting error that threatened to bring down his carefully constructed house of cards. I paused, letting the implication sink in. This was the detail designed to spark outrage, the impossible contradiction. Our father, the doctor, whose duty was to heal, saw his own daughter's catastrophic injury as a mere financial inconvenience, a liability to be eliminated to prevent his own professional and legal downfall. They didn't kick me out because of your college fund, Ryan. I stated, my voice dangerously soft. They kicked me out because the cost of keeping me would have eventually meant prison for Dad. And to them, their reputation and your untouched future was worth more than my life. Ryan didn't move. He didn't deny the fraud. He merely stared at the window, suddenly recognizing the true, horrific nature of the inheritance he had received. The silence in the room stretched thick and suffocating, punctuated only by the distant sounds of city traffic below. I allowed Ryan a moment to absorb the true meaning of his privilege, a privilege bought by my catastrophic injury and subsequent abandonment. Clara, I remember the fighting. They were scared about the money. Yes. But I never heard anything about fraud. Ryan whispered, desperation etched into his face. I sat back down. Of course you didn't. You were the favored investment, a high-yield stock that needed protection. I was the sinking ship. The memory of the day I was thrown out of our house in Greenwich, Connecticut was not blurry. This time it was stark, precise, and agonizingly clear. It was December, barely a week before Christmas. I was still weak, shuffling around on crutches, the stump of my left leg tightly bandaged and aching with phantom pain. I hadn't returned to school. Susan Jensen, my mother, usually so focused on maintaining her perfect social calendar, was packing my few belongings into industrial-sized trash bags. We have to be practical, Clara, Susan said, refusing to meet my eyes. She had always been Dad's spokesperson, translating his cold calculations into palatable, family-friendly terms. Your recovery is going to take years, hundreds of thousands of dollars. We can't afford it. I was leaning heavily on the kitchen counter, clutching the formica edge with white knuckles. Afford what? You're kicking me out. I'm 12 years old, Mom. You're almost 13, and you're legally considered an adult liability by the insurance company now that we've crossed certain policy thresholds. She lied, weaving half-truths into a blanket of rejection. Ryan needs the stability. He needs Yale. You need independence. We decided we have to prioritize the child with the best chance of long-term success. Then came Marcus, the renowned orthopedic surgeon, home early from his clinic. He walked past me as if I were a piece of misplaced furniture. "This is not a negotiation, Clara. We have arranged for you to stay at the downtown shelter. It's warm and they have medical staff. I've signed the necessary transfer papers to release us from your full financial liability. You will receive $200 to start your independence." $200. A pathetic severance package for severing a child's life. "You're doing this because I cost too much." I choked out the words catching in my throat. Marcus didn't flinch. He adjusted his silk tie. "We are making an investment decision, Clara. You're a smart girl. You'll figure it out. Ryan's future is too important to jeopardize." I remember Ryan standing at the edge of the hallway, a pristine, unopened textbook clutched to his chest. He was only a year older than me, but he looked away, his eyes fixed on the ceiling molding, pretending not to hear the sounds of his sister being condemned. He said nothing, not one word of protest. He was the perfect silent witness to my abandonment, knowing his tuition was being saved at the expense of my survival. They drove me downtown that night. Susan wept hysterically in the passenger seat. Not for me, but for the damage this unpleasantness was doing to her perfect image. Marcus remained clinical detached, driving me 20 miles from our manicured lawn to a concrete building where the air smelled of bleach and despair. I was handed a canvas duffel bag and my $200. That night, lying on a thin mattress in a crowded shelter, the phantom pain in my missing leg was nothing compared to the phantom limb of my own broken family. I realized I didn't just want to survive. I wanted to build a world where the name Marcus Jensen meant nothing, and the name Clara Jensen meant everything. The only way out was up. Survival became a furious, relentless, all-consuming drive. I learned to use the pain, the physical agony of adjusting to a cheap, ill-fitting prosthetic, the emotional trauma of betrayal as fuel. I completed my GED at 16, enrolled in community college classes at night, and worked double shifts cleaning hospital rooms during the day. Irony was my constant companion. I was sweeping the floors of the very institution that had ultimately rejected me. I worked and studied until my vision blurred and my body ached, pouring every ounce of resilience into the creation of a new self. The prosthetic leg was no longer a symbol of loss. It was a testament to the price of my education. I earned my degrees, started Innovate Solutions with a minuscule loan, and began designing and manufacturing advanced affordable prosthetics, the exact product I had needed most when I was 12 and was denied. I looked at Ryan now, sitting across the mahogany desk, his face contorted in pain and guilt. I had clawed my way through fire and concrete. He had sailed through Yale on my broken bones. "So Ryan," I concluded, tapping my fingers lightly on the desk, "when you tell me you need immediate employment, what I hear is that your life of privilege has finally caught up to you. Tell me, has the financial situation of your parents improved recently, or are the debts piling up?" The quiet clicking of the titanium on my prosthetic as I shifted slightly was the only sound of warning before I delivered the final calculated blow. Ryan flinched when I brought up the family finances. He nervously ran a hand through his expensive, perfectly cut hair. "The financial situation has been tense, Clara. They had some bad investments, like Dad said. The upkeep on the house and Mom's habits? It's been difficult." I scoffed. Difficult. Try sleeping on a urine-stained bus bench in downtown Hartford, Ryan. That is difficult. Financial difficulty in your parents' vocabulary means they might have to sell the beach house, not the Greenwich property. I leaned closer, dropping the professional tone completely. Let's talk about the summer you graduated from high school. You were 18. You received an acceptance letter from Yale and a brand new car from Mom and Dad. You knew I was gone. Did you ever wonder why did you ever stop enjoying your investment long enough to question the fate of the person whose sacrifice paid for it? Ryan's veneer shattered. Tears welled in his eyes, the kind of soft, easy tears that had never been available to me during my years of fighting for survival. I was 17 when you left Clara, only 13 when the accident happened. I was just a kid. They told me you were 18, legally an adult, and that you were choosing independence. They said you had a great work ethic and would be better off building your own life free from their traditional expectations. They lied to you, Ryan. And you knew they were lying. I didn't. I really believed they were trying to help you find your footing. No, I corrected him, the word, a whip crack across the silence. You chose to believe the comforting lie, because the truth that they were ruthless, calculating cowards who sacrificed their injured child to save their own comfortable lives, and your tuition would have required you to forfeit your special status. You were complicit by silence. You benefited from the crime. That makes you guilty. Ryan finally broke down, hiding his face in his hands. You're right. I knew. I saw the way Mom looked at me, always telling me I was the chosen one, the one with the future. I knew it wasn't right. I heard them arguing with the insurance adjuster, but I was afraid to lose my chance. I was afraid to become a liability disposable. His admission was a small, cold comfort. It validated the decade and a half of rage. And now here we are. I stated, resuming the professional tone. You want me to hire you to give you access to my company, my success, my security. Why? Because you're family. Family means nothing when money is involved. Ryan, I learned that lesson the hard way. He looked up, his face red and raw. He had the desperate, wounded eyes of a spoiled child who had finally hit his first real setback. Mom was right about you, he whispered, weaponizing the old pain, holding the words like a rusty knife. She said you were always bitter, always holding a grudge. You're vindictive, Clara. You're doing this because you hate me. You're always playing the victim. I felt a surge of energy, the old fire that had kept me alive in the shelter, but I let the anger sharpen my focus, not blur it. You're mistaken, Mr. Jensen. Hate is a consuming emotion that requires too much investment. I don't hate you. I simply regard you as an unqualified applicant who attempted to use nepotism to gain access to a senior role. Furthermore, you lack the core trait I require in all my employees: resilience. I stood up, signaling the end of the interview. My prosthetic leg clicked audibly on the marble floor, a calculated, powerful sound. You have never truly failed, Ryan. You have never been hungry, cold, or afraid that you wouldn't see the next sunrise. You have never had to rebuild your entire life from a trash bag and a $200 bill. You thought Yale would carry weight. I thought family would carry love. We were both wrong. The position is a no. And I suggest you stop looking for a senior role. Go find an entry-level job washing dishes or bussing tables in Stamford. Learn what real work is. Learn what it means to be truly disposable. And then perhaps you might understand the meaning of resilience. He pushed himself up, tears streaming down his face as he grabbed his portfolio, defeated and exposed. The door slammed behind him, leaving me alone in the pristine quiet. I didn't feel triumph. I felt the familiar, crushing weight of emptiness. The revenge was hollow. The feeling was a stark confirmation that their downfall alone would not bring me peace. I picked up the black, expensive briefcase Ryan had dropped. I didn't examine the contents. The only thing that mattered was that he was gone, banished from my territory, just as I had been banished from theirs. The sun beat brightly against the glass wall, a glaring contrast to the cold, professional atmosphere I maintained. I walked back to my chair, the silence echoing the finality of my decision. The confrontation was over, and I had won the small battle, but the war for absolute justice was far from finished. I had rejected the unworthy applicant, but Marcus and Susan still walked free, their ultimate crime unpunished by the law. I needed to move past the emotional theater of the interview and engage the kind of decisive, cold action that had actually saved me 15 years ago. My focus shifted from the failure of my brother to the inevitable reckoning of my parents. I knew this hollow victory in the office was merely the prologue to the real drama, the total demolition of the empire built on my broken bones. The truth about the fraud would eventually surface, and when it did, I would not be the victim or the spectator. I would be the executioner, ensuring the law took its full course. The sun beat brightly against the glass wall, a glaring contrast to the cold, professional atmosphere I maintained. I walked back to my chair, the silence echoing the finality of my decision to reject Ryan. The confrontation was over, but the war for absolute justice was far from finished. I had banished the unworthy applicant, yet Marcus and Susan still walked free, their ultimate crime unpunished by the law. I picked up the black, expensive briefcase Ryan had dropped, examining its smooth leather surface. My focus shifted from the failure of my brother to the inevitable reckoning of my parents. I knew this hollow victory in the office was merely the prologue to the real drama, the total demolition of the empire built on my broken bones. The truth about the fraud would eventually surface, and when it did, I would not be the victim or the spectator. I would be the executioner, ensuring the law took its full course. I didn't expect the reckoning to arrive quite so fast. My personal cell buzzed aggressively. The caller ID showed a number I didn't recognize, but it was local in the Bay Area. I answered, my voice still crisp with boardroom authority. Clara Jensen. Clara, it's Derek. Derek Sterling. Derek Sterling was my personal attorney and a silent partner in Innovate Solutions. He specialized in corporate defense and high-stakes financial litigation. He was the one I called when the stakes were truly life or death for the company. Derek. You sound serious. What's going on? Is this about the patent infringement case? Worse than the patent, Clara. I just took an urgent call from a contact at the U.S. Attorney's Office in the Southern District of New York. The name Marcus Jensen came up. My stomach dropped, not from shock, but from the cold confirmation of a long-held suspicion. The fraud. The Medicare billing. Exactly. It's a massive investigation under the False Claims Act and federal conspiracy statutes. The scope is huge, potentially $50 million in fraudulent claims over the past decade. They finally found the smoking gun. And what does this have to do with me? I asked, although I already knew the answer. My injury had been the catalyst. My records would be the evidence. Your medical records dating back to the accident and your initial treatments were flagged in the audit, Clara. The U.S. Attorney's Office is making a case that your father Marcus manipulated them to funnel millions through a network of affiliated clinics. Worse, they believe he may have intentionally prolonged treatment or inflated costs, in some areas possibly even yours, before your disappearance. The memory of being discarded at 12, sick, injured, and vulnerable was overlaid with this new terrible reality. Marcus hadn't just seen me as a financial liability. He had tried to use my injury as a cover for his crimes. The sheer audacity of his calculation was staggering. Derek continued, his voice grim. The immediate impact is that the FBI raided his clinic in Connecticut this morning. His medical license has been suspended effective immediately. They've frozen his assets, including the house in Greenwich, and the accounts tied to Susan Jensen. Clara, they are financially decimated, and Marcus is looking at 25 years in federal prison. This was the complete catastrophic downfall I had always subconsciously craved. It wasn't a heart attack. It was justice. Justice delivered by the government, not by my petty revenge. The phone rang again, interrupting Derek. This time it was an anonymous number with a Connecticut area code. I looked at Derek's name flashing on the screen, holding the first line, then answered the other line. Hello, Clara? Oh God, Clara, thank God you answered. It's me, Mom. Susan Jensen's voice was hysterical, stripped of its suburban polish. She sounded small, desperate, and utterly broken. "Susan," I replied, using her first name, the final barrier of respect gone. "What is it?" "They're here, Clara. The FBI. They took the hard drives. They're taking the house. Marcus is being detained for questioning. We need your help. You're the CEO of a biotech firm. You know people. You know lawyers. You know the media." Her plea wasn't one of love, but of necessity. Just as they had abandoned me for being inconvenient, they were now seeking me out for being powerful. "You're asking me, the girl you kicked out on the street, to save your reputation, to risk my multi-million-dollar company and my own reputation, to save you from the legal consequences of the very greed that destroyed our family?" I asked, my voice flat, almost academic. There was a ragged, gasping silence on the other end. "Please, Clara. He's your father. We've lost everything. We have nothing left. We can't afford a federal defense attorney, not now that all the accounts are seized. I don't know what to do." I stared out the window at the brilliant California sun, feeling the weight of the enormous, unforgiving choice laid before me. Derek's legal counsel, a voice of caution and self-preservation, waited on the other line. My mother, the face of my trauma, begged for rescue. The true game had begun. The quiet hum of the jet engines faded, replaced by the hushed reverence of high-stakes litigation. I went directly from the airport. 48 hours after Susan's desperate call, I found myself in the sterile silence of Derek Sterling's Manhattan law offices. The meeting room was high above the frantic pace of the financial district, offering a cynical view of the money that had destroyed my family. Derek sat beside me, his expression grave, representing caution and professional distance. Across the polished mahogany table, looking utterly diminished, were Marcus and Susan. Marcus, the once impeccable orthopedic surgeon, was dressed in a rumpled suit, his face etched with exhaustion and sheer panic. His eyes held no trace of the clinical detachment I remembered from that fateful December night long ago. Susan was smaller, her hair unkempt, her expensive clothing crumpled, the sudden loss of her privileged identity visible in every crease and slump. They looked like strangers in borrowed clothes. "Thank you for coming," Clara. Marcus said, his voice hoarse, devoid of its former authority. "I know we have no right to ask this, but we are facing the complete collapse of our lives. The U.S. attorney is relentless." I didn't offer a comforting word or acknowledge his presence. I simply opened the legal folder Derek had prepared, its contents a detailed roadmap of their impending doom. "I am here on the advice of my counsel, and strictly for a deposition of facts, not to offer assistance." I stated, my tone colder than the winter air outside. "I require a full, unredacted account of what happened, starting with the moment you decided my life was disposable." Susan choked on a sob. "Clara, we already told you." "You told me lies, Susan. You told me you needed Ryan's college fund." Derek's contacts confirmed the timeline for the federal investigation began 2 years before my accident. The insurance fraud was already underway. My bills were just a complication that threatened to expose the $50 million scheme. I looked directly at Marcus. "Tell me the truth, Marcus. Tell me why my 10-year rehabilitation and my eventual prosthetic was considered such a massive liability that you abandoned a 12-year-old child in the middle of winter." Marcus slumped, finally defeated by the weight of his own calculated cruelty. "The bills, Clara, they triggered an internal audit at the largest insurance carrier," Marcus confessed, staring at the polished mahogany table. "We had been careful for years, but your injury was messy, complex. The legitimate costs, combined with the volume of fraudulent claims I was already filing, created a spike in the ledger that they couldn't ignore. If they investigated your files, they would have found the entire network. So you cut the most volatile piece of evidence I finished for him. You removed the injured child, the living, breathing symbol of your fraud, to save your own skin and your reputation. We rationalized it." Susan whispered, her voice cracking. We told ourselves you were strong, you'd figure it out. And Ryan, he was the easier investment. He was healthy, he was brilliant. He didn't have the medical history that was now a threat to us. And Ryan stood by and said nothing I added, addressing the silent complicity that had defined my brother's privilege. Marcus finally looked up at me, his eyes pleading. We are facing prison, Clara. I'll lose everything, including my freedom. Your company, Innovate Solutions, deals with medical technology with federal contracts. You have access to key people in D.C. You know the media protocols. You could contact the U.S. Attorney's Office, offer testimony, perhaps that exonerates my intent. I slam my hand down on the table, the sharp, authoritative sound echoing in the silence. My company was built to help people who have been failed by the system, not to facilitate the escape of a man who defrauded the American taxpayer and abandoned his own child to cover up his crimes. You want me to risk everything I earned through blood tears and a lifetime of pain to save the guilty. I stood up the movement, forcing Marcus and Susan to look up at the towering figure I had become. You chose money over me, you chose fraud over family, and now you want me to sacrifice my integrity to give you a soft landing. I refuse. I looked at Derek. We're done here, Derek. There is nothing more to discuss. As I turned to leave, Susan lunged forward, grabbing my arm, her composure completely gone. Clara, where is your compassion? Your brother is alone. We're going to jail. Don't you remember what family means? I pulled my arm away gently, deliberately. I remember exactly what family means, Susan. It means betrayal. And the only thing I care about now is that you finally face the consequences of the choice you made 15 years ago. The air shimmered with the certainty of my verdict. I walked towards the door, leaving them stranded with the ruins of their carefully constructed lives. The limousine windows shielded me from the cold gaze of the Manhattan skyline as I was driven away from Derek's offices. My decision was final, non-negotiable, and utterly definitive. Later that evening, I sat in my suite at the Peninsula Hotel, the only place in New York I felt truly safe. Derek called. It was the right decision, Clara. Getting involved would have exposed Innovate Solutions to unnecessary scrutiny and potentially placed you under suspicion of obstruction of justice. They have an airtight case against Marcus and Susan regarding the False Claims Act violations. It's over. And Ryan, I asked. He's staying with friends, still unemployed, still shell-shocked. He knows he has no protection anymore. His Yale degree is a meaningless piece of paper now that the family name is linked to federal fraud. He's truly on his own. The phone conversation ended. I looked out at the lights of the city. My revenge fantasy, the triumphant CEO destroying her impoverished family, was rendered obsolete by a much greater, more satisfying force: actual justice. The following day, I did something unexpected. I took a car back to Connecticut, not to see Marcus or Susan, but to find Ryan. I found him sitting alone in a small, empty diner off I-95, the very kind of greasy spoon place where I had worked double shifts 15 years earlier. He looked tired and broken, the weight of his sudden dispossession evident in his slumped shoulders. I walked toward him, the familiar rhythmic clack-thud of my prosthetic on the tiled floor announcing my arrival. The investigation is going to move fast, Ryan, I said, sliding into the booth across from him. They'll lose everything. Marcus is facing decades in federal prison for the $50 million in fraud. Susan is facing severe fines and potential jail time for conspiracy and money laundering. Ryan didn't look up. I know. Derek called me. It's what they deserve. Yes, it is what they deserve. But what about you? The golden boy. Where do you go now that your golden ticket has expired? I don't know. I guess I'll figure it out. Like you did. No, I corrected him. You won't figure it out like I did. I had nothing to lose and pure hatred to drive me. You still have shame, and you still have soft hands. But you have a starting point. I didn't have the truth. I reached into my briefcase, pulling out a small, unsealed envelope, not a job offer, but a single sheet of paper with a list. Innovate Solutions is not hiring you, but I can give you a path. This is a list of contacts for community colleges in the Hartford area that offer certification programs in advanced medical tech support. Start there. Get a basic specialized skill that the market actually needs. Find an apartment away from this area. Get a job washing dishes, whatever. Just start earning your life one painful, difficult step at a time. Ryan looked at the paper, then back at me. Why are you doing this, Clara? You said you didn't hate me, but you don't forgive them either. What do you want? I met his gaze, my expression unyielding. I want distance, Ryan. Distance from the anger, distance from the trauma, and distance from the toxic lie that was the Jensen family. You are a victim of their manipulation, but you were also their complicit beneficiary. I am giving you a chance to earn your own redemption, not mine. If you succeed, good for you. If you fail, I will never call you. I stood up, adjusting my jacket. He grabbed my wrist, a final desperate plea. Clara, will you ever forgive them? They are my parents, too. I looked at his hand on my arm, the touch foreign and unwelcome. I pulled my arm away. Forgiveness is for them to earn from God, not from me. They destroyed me when I was 12, and now they will face the consequences of their own actions, not mine. I don't need closure. I need distance. And you just bought yourself a one-way ticket to justice. I turned and walked away, leaving Ryan with the paper list, the heavy silence, and the shattered pieces of his life. My heels clicked, a powerful, steady rhythm of absolute freedom. I had done it. I didn't just reject them. I watched them fall, and I refused to catch them. The ultimate sentence was not hatred. It was indifference, and absolute adherence to the justice I had been denied. This story is a harsh reminder that not all family wounds heal, and some betrayals, especially those calculated for financial gain at the expense of a child's health and safety, are unforgivable. Marcus and Susan Jensen learned that greed and calculated cruelty have real-world consequences in a society governed by the rule of law. Their comfortable lives built on fraud and the sacrifice of an injured child collapsed under the weight of their own actions. Justice in this case was not revenge. It was the inevitable legal outcome of their immorality. For me, Clara, the victory was not in their downfall, but in the final realization that I no longer needed their apology, their forgiveness, or their punishment to define my existence. I chose absolute freedom, the freedom to build a life based on merit, competence, and self-respect, completely disentangled from the guilt, anger, and manipulation of the past. If people treat you like a liability, you must become your own greatest asset. Do not allow the pain of betrayal to become your prison. Use your resilience, find your independence, and when faced with those who wronged you, choose the path that brings you the most peace, even if that path is absolute distance and the unwavering application of justice. Thank you for watching and listening to my story until the very end. If you agree that some actions are truly unforgivable, or if you found inspiration in Clara's journey to self-determination, please share your thoughts and comments below. Your perspective matters.